Good evening, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you for Rabbi Feigenbaum for being our technical coordinator once again. Just want to once again begin by thanking all the people that are working night and day at the tremendous self-sacrifice, ensuring that our lives are as uninterrupted as possible. And many of them are not noticed. Many of them are not appreciated. Many of them just go about their daily lives. But we should stop and think the next time we sit down at the table and see food come to the table, packages with groceries coming to the house, and realize that people have put themselves sometimes in great deals of risk so we can have our basic essentials during this time. You know, sacrifice is something that has meant different things to different people at different times. And we are learning as this pandemic has raged through every sector of society. We're seeing great sacrifices that people have made. And we have learned, and we continue to learn, that true greatness comes when people are able to go ahead and make the necessary sacrifices. It's not easy, and it's not convenient, but it's necessary for the ultimate good. That is to bring godliness and goodness into the world. There's this section of the Torah this week that we may all be familiar with, not necessarily with the passage of the verses of the Torah, but definitely with the concept, and all of us are observant of it in one way or another, some a little less, some a little more, some very, very observant, some a little less. And we all know about it. But I think we have to re-examine our relationship with it. And of course, I'm referring to the Shabbos, to the Shabbat. I'm referring to the Shabbos, as it says in this week's Torah portion, beginning of all the section of all the different festivals, the different Chagim, the different Jewish holidays, which are articulated and communicated in this week's Parsha. God says to Moses, "Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe lemor." God says to Moses, "Daber el bnei Yisrael, speak to bnei Yisrael, speak to the sons of Israel, v'amarta aleim, and you shall say to them, Mo'adei Hashem asher tikra'osam mikra'ei kodesh." The designated days, the designated times which God has referred to them as appointed festivals, holy gatherings. Elohim Mo'ada, these are my festivals. These are my special times. And the Torah begins to tell us about Pesach, Passover, and the Omer, and the counting of the Omer, which we find ourselves in now. And we learn about Shavuos, which is coming up, and Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. All the biblical holidays are recorded in this week's portion. But there's one thing that precedes all of the Yom Tovim, precedes all of the festivals, and that is, of course, the Shabbos, the Holy Sabbath. It says, Mo'adei Hashem asher tikra'osam mo'adei mikra'ei kodesh. There's a designated space and time, and that's referred to as the Sabbath. God's presence manifests itself in this world in many different ways, on objects, on relationships. For example, when two people get married under a chuppah, the Kadesh, we say the blessing that this couple has been sanctified through holiness by coming together with a chuppah. God's presence is also manifested in time. In time. And we probably can appreciate this arguably more than any other time in history, where our time has become so scarce and so busy and so challenged and such a scarce resource. We have to remember that our time ultimately belongs to God. That is the inconvenient truth about Shabbos. You have to stop everything. You have to rest for a day. Why so? Why does this make sense? It makes no sense except for one reason. Because that's the way we bring godliness into this world. That's the way we have a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. And there's always challenges. It's so overwhelming for many of us. There's so many different ways to go ahead and strengthen our connection to the Shabbos. It would be unfortunate and disappointing if somebody said to themselves, I checked the box, I'm Shomer Shabbos, therefore this does not apply to me. But the reality is that we all need to do a better job in terms of our relationship with the Shabbos, with the Shabbat. The Talmud tells us, God said to Moses, Matana Tova Yeshlu Beis Genazai. I have a special treasure in my treasure house. The Shabbat Shema, its name is Shabbos. And he wrote, Zalitem L'Bnei Yisrael, I want to go ahead and give it to the Jewish people. I want to go ahead and give it to the Jewish people. Because when we go ahead and we observe the Shabbos and we taste the Shabbos and when we experience the Shabbos, when we sink our teeth into the Shabbos, we're connecting to God Himself. And we're able to go ahead and have that special connection that spread that godliness into the world. But it's not easy. It's not easy. Many times we have to give up. You have to give up on things. You have to go ahead and make difficult choices. It was interesting. It's well known that El Al Airlines is the only airline in the world that's Shomer Shabbos. Unbelievable thing. I mentioned it before. But here you have an airline that voluntarily gives up its revenue at least 1/7 of the time. And I say at least 1/7 because they also rest. They do not fly on all the Jewish holidays. And that's remarkable that you have a national airline of a country that's willing to go ahead and put principle over profits and make a conscious decision that they're going to forego the profits of all these days of flying. Because why? Israel, after all, is not a theocracy. There's always a debate of how religious Israel should be, what kind of religious component it should have. But going back to the decision of when Allah decided to become Shomer Shabbos, was a speech in the Knesset that I found the transcripts of given by Menachem Begin many years ago. And Menachem Begin was under much criticism for choosing to go ahead and make the El Al Airlines Shomer Shabbos. And this is what he said in the Knesset many years ago. He said, we cannot engage in profit and loss calculations when it comes to the eternal heritage of the Jewish people. There is no way of assessing the religious, national, social, historical, and ethical values of the Shabbos day by the yardstick of financial loss or gain. In a revived Jewish state, we simply cannot engage in such calculations. If it were not for the Shabbos that restored the souls and revived the spiritual lives week by week of our long-suffering nation, our trials would have pulled us down to the lowest levels of materialism and moral intellectual decay. After that speech, the Knesset decided, he said other things as well, the Knesset decided to go ahead and make El Al a Shomer Shabbos airline. It was a close vote, but that's what they decided, and should be noted, that Menachem Begin himself was a very traditional Jew, but I don't believe that he self-identified as a religious Jew. He was very religious in other areas, but he felt as a Jewish nation, this is what needs to be done. And the story goes, when he went to Egypt for Anwar Sadat's funeral, which was on a Saturday, he walked miles rather than be given a ride to attend the funeral. Miles in Egypt, he was discouraged by the Shin Bet for taking such a risk, but he did so anyways. So Shabbos calls us all to make that sacrifice. But Shabbos is not just about sacrifice. Shabbos is also a tremendously rewarding and satisfying and even pleasurable experience. If somebody goes ahead and has the ability to be Shomer Shabbos, but not just to be Shomer Shabbos when I say check the box, but to enter Shabbos in a meaningful way with song and prayer, and then go ahead and have a dinner with their family, and they have a discussion about appropriate things, and engage in song and camaraderie and the warm family feeling without the distraction of a phone, a TV, or the internet. That experience is called Me'ein Olam Haba, a small portion of the world to come. But many times we're not able to go ahead and do so. We say, because look at this we're going to lose out on. And look at that we're going to lose out on. And what's the leniency for that? And what's the leniency for this? And I was many times hearing, is there a leniency for this? Is there a leniency to do this on Shabbos? Is there a leniency to do that on Shabbos? And many times there are appropriate leniencies to do that. But if a person's always seeking the most lenient path forward in keeping the Shabbos, I would say it's disappointing in terms of not being able to experience the full realization of the blessings of the Shabbos. So as this period of COVID has taught us, we're not really in control of much. We're not really in control of much. Even our time, we're not in control of, we've realized. We've thought we've made plans to go away for Pesach, we made plans to go away for the summer, we have made plans to go away with our kids to camp and so on and so forth. COVID has taught us many things, but it's also taught us we need to be humbled. We need to recognize that our time is borrowed. We're all on a finite amount of time. And it's up to us. God gave us the challenge to sanctify the time in our lives. And there's no better way that we can sanctify the time in our lives by upping our game when it comes to our relationship with Shabbos. Both in the aspect of Zachor, remembering the Shabbos, which is with the positive mitzvahs, with the making of the Kiddush and the meal and the song and the prayer, and also the Shomer, the thou shall not go ahead and engage in creative work on Shabbos. If we're able to go ahead and up our game when it comes to both remembering the Sabbath and safeguarding the Sabbath, the Shabbos, we will perhaps go ahead and be not only better people for it, but really realizing our truest mission in life. That is that God put us into this world to go ahead and spread his goodness and his godliness in this world. If we're able to have that relationship with Shabbos, if we're able to go ahead and connect more with Shabbos, connect with ourselves in a more meaningful way, connect with our family in a more meaningful way, connect with God in a more meaningful way during the holiness of the Shabbos, then that will be a tremendous merit for us. Some people have accused me, rightfully so perhaps, of being an unrepentant baseball fan. And I will conclude with a baseball story. And that is, once in a movie, this baseball story, this guy, he was a great hitter. He was a great hitter, but not such a great base runner. He was a great slugger, and he hit the ball, he hit many home runs, but he was always slow getting to first base. And he never wanted to go ahead and run to second base and stretch that single into a double because he thought he would get thrown out at second base. The story goes, one time he hit the ball really far, and he thought this time he's going to go ahead and stretch the single into a double, and he's huffing and puffing as he gets to first base. He's not the greatest runner, but he rounds first, and he's on his way to second. And as he rounds first and he's on his way to second, his greatest nightmare occurs. And that is that he trips over the first base bag and falls on his feet, falls on his face rather, and he realizes, I shouldn't have been too ambitious. I just should have stayed at first. And he's all down and depressed that this time, once again, he's going to go ahead and be tagged out. And everybody said, get up, get up. You have to get up and continue running. And he says, get up and continue running. Why should I get up and continue running? And he says, don't you realize, they say to him, don't you realize that you hit a home run? He hit a home run, and he didn't even know it. He hit a home run, and he fell down by the bag because he didn't even know it. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes we hit a home run, and we don't even know it. The relationship that we have with Shabbos, the opportunity to keep Shabbos, the opportunity to spread goodness and godliness in this world through the observance and the sanctity of the Shabbos is a home run that we have in our lives. Let us make sure that we don't just lose our appreciation, because the gift of Shabbos is something that we should never take for granted. On that note, have a good Shabbos.